Did you know that the guillotine was still in use when Star Wars hit theaters? Or how about the fact that Charles Manson sold a song to the Beach Boys? I'm Mike with List 25, and today I'm counting down 25 facts only the most knowledgeable people know. So, if you haven't heard these before, don't worry, most people haven't. Let's get into it. You've probably heard that Google comes from the word Google, the number 1 followed by 100 zeros, but the way they landed on it was a total accident. In 1996, Larry Page and Sergey Brin almost called their search engine BackRub, based on web backlinks. I know, it's not exactly brandable, right? A year later, during a brainstorming session, Stanford grad Sean Anderson suggested Googleplex. Larry liked Google better and asked Sean to check if the domain was free. When Sean typed it in, he accidentally spelled it Google. They liked the mistake and ran with it. Honestly, it was actually probably one of the luckiest typos ever because BackRub it just doesn't have the same ring. Sticking with tech for a moment, have you ever heard someone say there's a bug in the system? Well, that phrase started with an actual bug. In 1947, a team of engineers working on Harvard's Mark II computer found a moth jammed inside the machine, causing electrical issues. They taped it to the logbook and wrote, "First actual case of bug being found." Rear Admiral Grace Hopper actually helped popularize the story, and debugging became the term for fixing code ever since. That story is true, by the way. And here's another one that catches people off guard. There's a rainbow you can only see at night. It's called, fittingly, a moonbow. And it's basically a rainbow made by moonlight. Same process, light bouncing off raindrops, just with a lot less wattage. They only show up around a full moon, and even then, they're so faint they usually look white. Your eyes just can't pull color in the dark like that. So the full Roy G. Biv thing doesn't quite hit the same. But if you are in the right place at the right time with just the right weather, well, you might just spot one. Anyway, do you know what's a lot less peaceful than a moonbow? A microwave. Everybody's favorite kitchen device only exists because an engineer named Percy Spencer noticed a candy bar melted in his pocket while he was working near a radar machine. He was like, I'm just guessing here, and started experimenting. By 1945, he'd invented the microwave, and Raytheon paid him a massive total of $2 for it. Well, that's about $35 today. Yeesh. The first commercial model dropped in 1947, and today, you and I can reheat our pizza in less than a minute. Thanks, Percy. You truly deserved more. So microwaves changed everything, but so did a little metal ring. The whole point of fast food is predictability. Same taste, same look, same everything, no matter where you are. Unless you happen to be me, because no restaurant can ever get my order right. It's a thing. Never order food with me. Sorry. Anyway, but that didn't happen by accident. Back when chains like McDonald's were growing fast, the whole idea of consistency became their mission. So they invented the Bun Gauge, a small tool used to measure the height, thickness, and width of hamburger buns. A version of it has been in use since the 50s, and it's still in use today. In fact, it's such a big deal in fast food history that the Smithsonian literally has one in its collection. Yeah, there's a national bun tool, and also a guy who can talk to elephants. Tim Storms doesn't just have a deep voice, he has the deepest voice ever recorded. Born in 1972, Storms holds the Guinness World Record for the widest vocal range, a full 10 octaves. For comparison, most singers have a 3-octave range. Mariah Carey, around 5. Storms can hit notes so low, humans can't hear them. Literally. His lowest, a G minor 7, clocks in at 0.189 hertz, which is a full 8 octaves below the lowest G on a piano. It can only be picked up using low-frequency microphones and verified through sound analysis. However, and here's a fun fact, elephants can actually hear him. His vocal cords are nearly double the usual length, and according to his doctors, his special gift is made possible by the surrounding muscles that give him that deep, rumbling tone. Amazing grace. It's a voice that should come with a fortune. Speaking of, they're not even from China. Fortune cookies, that is. Despite being handed out with every egg roll, they were actually invented by Japanese Americans in California. The whole idea actually started in Kyoto in the 1870s, where shops were selling sesame miso crackers with fortunes tucked inside. When Japanese immigrants came to the US, they brought the concept with them. And by the early 1900s, bakeries in LA and San Francisco were serving up a sweeter, vanilla-flavored version. Unfortunately, when Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps during World War II, their businesses shut down. So the Chinese restaurants stepped in and took over production. Today, one New York factory pumps out over 4 million cookies a day. Now, let's talk about the day women in France got the vote and Hitler died. On April 29, 1945, French women were allowed to vote for the first time in history. That alone would have been monumental. But what happened next makes it even more surreal. Less than 24 hours later, Adolf Hitler was dead in his Berlin bunker. The timing was pure coincidence, but you can't ignore the symbolism. Just as France opened the door to democracy for half its population, one of history's worst dictators exited stage left. It was a 24-hour stretch that reshaped Europe, one way or another. For women in France, the future finally started. For Hitler, it very much did not. Okay, without sounding too blasé, let's move on to pencils. Billions of them. 2 billion pencils are made in the United States every single year. Worldwide, that number goes up to over 14 billion. That's enough to circle the Earth more than 40 times. And the best part? Every one of those little sticks can write about 45,000 words, or draw a line that's roughly 35 miles long. In fact, one pencil could knock out the entire Great Gatsby with words to spare. And while I'm on the subject of little things that have a big impact, a few years ago, physicists figured out how to teleport a quantum state from one atom to another over a whole meter of space. Not the atom itself, but its exact state, energy, spin, the whole quantum fingerprint. That's huge because atoms can hold quantum information longer than light particles, making them way more useful for quantum computing. And all it took was 2 ytterbium atoms, laser pulses, a beam splitter, and some wild quantum entanglement. It only worked about once every 12 minutes, but still, scientists move quantum information without moving matter. But if you're more into hands-on puzzles than theoretical physics, this next one's for you. In 1974, Hungarian architect Erno Rubik created what we now know as the Rubik's Cube. But at the time, he wasn't trying to invent a toy. He built it as a teaching tool to help his students understand how 3D objects move and rotate through space. And it worked. Maybe a little too well. His students were obsessed. So Rubik decided to patent it, originally calling it the Magic Cube. A few years later, toy companies got interested, and by 1980, it went global. Moving on, allow me to introduce you to the kid who made dihydrogen monoxide sound terrifying enough to ban. Most science fair projects play it safe and come with the usual baking soda volcanoes, potato-powered clocks, maybe some invisible ink if somebody's feeling bold. But in 1997, 14-year-old Nathan Zahner went in a very different direction. His project warned classmates about a dangerous chemical called dihydrogen monoxide. He handed out a report listing legit-sounding risks: sweating, bloating, metal corrosion, acid rain. All of it was true. And 43 out of 50 classmates voted to ban it. What they didn't realize? Dihydrogen monoxide is just water. His actual project title, How Gullible Are We?, was a perfect lesson on critical thinking. And yes, it won him first place. All right, time for something completely different. Venus might be about the same size as Earth, but, well, that's where the resemblance ends. It's basically our evil twin. Surface temperatures hit 900 degrees Fahrenheit. The air pressure is 100 times higher than ours, and the clouds? Full of sulfuric acid. So, if the crushing heat doesn't get you, the acid rain probably will. Oh, and then there are the winds. At the cloud tops, about 40 miles up, they tear around the planet at nearly 250 miles an hour, faster than the planet itself rotates. Earth's winds don't even come close. Venus, total overachiever, in the worst way. And because language is just as weird as space, well, let's go there next. Have you ever been called out for saying something like deafening silence or jumbo shrimp? Someone probably couldn't wait to tell you that it's an oxymoron, 2 contradictory words mashed together. But here's the kicker. Oxymoron itself is an oxymoron. In Greek, oxy means sharp or smart, and moron means, well, dull. So yeah, the word that describes a contradiction is a contradiction. Luckily, not all confusing words come from ancient Greek. Some just come from telecom engineers. Fortunately, this next one isn't about acid rain or logic traps. It's the hashtag symbol. Or at least that's what most people call it now. Technically, it's called an octothorpe. Octo refers to its 8 points, but thorpe? Well, that part's a mystery. Some say it comes from the Old English word for village. Others think Bell Labs engineers just made it up to sound official. And you should know that before Twitter got a hold of it, it already had a full resume. It's been the pound sign, the number sign, even a chess move, and a proofreading mark. Next up, something a bit more existential. The sun has officially joined AARP. No, really, it's about halfway through its life, which makes it about 4.6 billion years old. In stellar terms, that's middle-aged. However, it's still got another 4.5 billion years to go before things get weird. Like expanding into a red giant and eventually collapsing into a white dwarf about the size of Earth. When that happens, its mass will stay the same, but its volume will shrink big time. At that point, if there are any humans left, we'll probably need a new solar system. Or a really good SPF. Oddly enough, we're already spending millions to survive space, even without the whole exploding sun thing. A full NASA spacesuit costs about $12 million, and roughly 70% of that goes straight into the backpack. And it makes sense, because the backpack is in charge of managing an astronaut's body temperature. It provides oxygen, filters out carbon dioxide, and keeps them from dying in what is, let's just say, a very uncomfortable way. The rest of the suit handles pressure, radiation, and micrometeorite protection. In short, it's basically a miniature spaceship wrapped around a person. So yeah, when astronauts say suiting up is a process, they're not exaggerating. Of course, technology's come a long way, though some tools stuck around way longer than they should have. Most people think of the guillotine as a brutal relic from the 1700s, but it stuck around way longer than you'd expect. France was still using it into the 1970s. In fact, the very last person to be executed by guillotine was Hamida Jandoubi, a convicted murderer, on September 10th, 1977. That's the same year Star Wars hit theaters. So while George Lucas was reinventing sci-fi on the big screen, France was still using a centuries-old execution device. Thankfully, Jandoubi was the last person ever beheaded by legal execution in the Western world. Okay, let's pivot to something a little more unexpected and way more wholesome. You know how some people talk in their sleep? Well, deaf people sign in theirs. I mean, it actually makes total sense when you think about it. Sign language is how they communicate all day long, so just like we use spoken words. And since we use language constantly, it's not that weird that the brain keeps doing its thing even after we nod off. Researchers first spotted this during a sleep study on a 71-year-old deaf man with REM sleep disorder. Once he hit deep sleep, he started signing fluently. And since the scientists could read it, they knew exactly what he was dreaming about. Cool. And it was just a little bit creepy. Our next fact rewrites what you probably learned about the printing press. Most people are under the impression that Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, but that's not quite right. While the Gutenberg Bible was the first mass-produced printed book in Europe, it wasn't the first printed book in the world. It wasn't even the first to use movable type. Chinese and Korean inventors have been printing books with movable type centuries before Gutenberg was even born. Granted, Gutenberg made waves in Europe around 1455, but the very first printed book, that dates back to China in the year 868. Yeah, 868. I didn't miss a digit. It was called the Diamond Sutra, and it was printed from wood blocks nearly 600 years before Gutenberg even picked up a press. Now, let's fast forward to 1815, when the Earth decided to make some of its own history. That was the year that Mount Tambora on Sumbawa Island in Indonesia erupted so violently that it became the biggest volcanic eruption in recorded history. It lasted 2 full weeks, and the worst hit between April 10th and 11th. The eruption was 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa, and 52,000 times stronger than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Trees were obliterated. The island was stripped bare, and ash rafts floated all the way to India. 92,000 people died, mostly from starvation. Global temperatures dropped, weather spiraled, and 1816 ended up in the history books as the year without a summer. Now, I know you've all been waiting for this one. Yeah, I'm finally getting to the Beach Boys, and that one song they probably wish didn't exist. Before he became one of the most infamous people in modern history, Charles Manson was just a guy trying to make it in the music business. In the summer of 1968, he managed to befriend Beach Boys drummer Dennis Wilson, and for a little while, Manson was just hanging around trying to get his big break. At one point, Dennis got him some studio time in his brother Brian's recording space, but Manson didn't exactly crush it. Still, Dennis bought one of his songs anyway. It was called Cease to Exist. When the Beach Boys finally recorded it, they changed a bunch of the lyrics to fit their sound and released it under a new title, Never Learn Not to Love. Manson wasn't exactly thrilled about the changes, and definitely not about the fact that they didn't credit him. So he mailed Dennis a single bullet. Years later, when Rolling Stone asked Wilson about the whole thing, his reply was short and final. As long as I live, I'll never talk about that. Fair enough. Serial killers and failed music careers aside, did you know your brain actually eats itself when you don't get enough sleep? It's a real process called phagocytosis. Basically, certain cells in your body, including the brain, engulf and break down weaker or damaged cells. It sounds intense, but it's totally normal. Most of the time, that job's handled by single-celled organisms like amoebas, or by white blood cells when it's happening in your body. However, in the brain, this self-cleaning system is surprisingly active. Old or broken cells get cleared out so new, healthier ones can take their place. But here's the catch. If you don't get enough sleep, that process speeds up, and not in a helpful way. Without rest, your brain goes a little too hard on cleanup duty and can start breaking down the good stuff too. So sleep isn't just beauty rest. It's your brain keeping itself from going full zombie. The next spot on today's list is about 3 legends and 1 surprising timeline. It's incredible to think that 3 of the most influential minds in human history may have been alive at the same time. I'm talking about Confucius, Socrates, and Buddha. Now, historians aren't totally sure. This was a long time ago, but the dates line up surprisingly well. Buddha is believed to have died around 483 BCE. Confucius followed just a few years later in 479, and Socrates, well, he was born in 469 BCE. So that's 14 years where all 3 could have been breathing the same planet's air. Sure, they lived on opposite sides of the world, but still, the idea that tiny baby Socrates was crawling around while the other 2 were finishing their legacies is 100% amazing. Now, bringing us to the end of today's list, did you know researchers actually found something at the bottom of Loch Ness? And no, sadly, it wasn't Nessie. It was golf balls. Thousands of them. In 2009, researchers did a deep scan of Loch Ness, hoping to find something that might prove the legendary monster real, but instead of ancient creatures or mysterious shadows, they found over 100,000 golf balls sitting at the bottom of the lake. Apparently, the area around Loch Ness is home to several golf courses, and for years, people have been teeing off straight into the water for fun. So while the legend of Nessie still lives on, she's currently buried under a mountain of bad drives and mulligans. And that's a wrap. But now I need to know, which one surprised you the most? Or better yet, do you have an even better, unknown but super interesting fact? Drop in the comments below. I love it when you surprise me. Oh, and if you haven't done enough yet, you have to check out our related video, 25 happy facts that'll make your day a little better. Elephants having parties when babies are born and peas taking naps together? Yeah, you're gonna wanna watch it, trust me. Also, don't forget to share, like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss out on content, do all the fun stuff, check out our social medias, join our Discord, do all that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. And yes, I'm going through a little bit of a cold, so I sound terrible. I noticed a couple comments. I'll get over it.